I use timers all the time with work, all the time. I always work in time blocks. And that's what my alarm is. I think it's totally funny. I downloaded this timer like 10 years ago and it still cracks me up to this day. All right. Better than like a buzzer. Hopefully now you have a good like one page on the spirit of it. Like this is the spirit of it. This is how you're going to be feeling and thinking and doing and believing. So that when you get kind of caught in strategy or execution on strategy, you need to literally remind or reprogram your neural pathways into this person. This person matters. This person matters so much. I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to make this sacred and slide everything else into the category of the profane. And that's why the multidimensional self needs to show up on this paper, that it's not just one part, but it really is the whole. It really is the whole. So I had, in doing this exercise with you all, a feeling, and I know many of you had the same feeling, a feeling of gratitude. And I want to talk about gratitude and responsibility. When I started to intersect with the wisdom traditions, I think I was, probably 10th grade was when I started, 10th or 11th. No, it was 11th grade. My soccer coach, Don Cannon, was a graduate. He was an English major at Harvard University, and then he became an English teacher for a high school. And he was also my soccer coach. And I was a good soccer player. So we were pretty tight, and he was a very special person. And he happened to teach mythology to honors English students in 11th grade. And so I was introduced to Joseph Campbell and in the hero's journey and the hero with 1,000 faces and I think that was really like the first of like, oh, there's stuff out there that really makes sense. Thank gosh. Because until then I hadn't really run into much meaning. I was raised in an atheist home. So there's that. And my mom was an excommunicated Catholic. So there was no respect for religion and not really awareness of spirituality. So there wasn't much of that. I was just really kind of interfacing with just hyper consumer modern culture, be that what it may. And so when I started to interface with perennial wisdom traditions, and then and was blessed to actually have a teacher after that, Casey Potts, who was the basketball coach, who also was a graduate of Harvard University, because I grew up outside of Boston, so there's a lot of very good academic people around. And he taught great books, and that's where I really started to interface with a lot of the great books over time in the world. And by then, I had also met two of my, I would say, my eco-ethnic, ethic, that's the word I'm going for, ethic guides when I was working for the Student Conservation Association. So I got to work in the forest away from all technology, electricity, running water, all that. And I got to learn from them. They were graduates of Williams College, which is an excellent college in the United States. And they were both very educated environmentalists who had been working in eco-conservation for a while. So all that was around like 11th grade, 12th grade. And then since then, I then learned to just really seek out people that were more able to help me learn what I needed to learn. And that brought me into yoga and ayurveda and a lot of amazing teachers along the way. So anyone who's interfaced, and you all have, with those who have devoted their life to passing on meaning, right? There's a level when you're doing this of like, thank gosh they did what they did. Thank gosh they sacrificed whatever they needed to sacrifice, right? To do what they needed to do. Like in my case, like thank goodness Dr. Ladd came to the United States. I know it wasn't easy. Thank gosh Paramahamsa Yogananda made the journey too. And Maharishi. And, and that's just to the country that of my origin. Thank goodness too, my grandparents left really oppressive situations in Russia and Poland made the journey. So when you're doing this and you're seeing the feelings, there's often a feeling of like, thank goodness other people have lived a life of meaning. And it's important to tap into that, because you'll find in there, it's like tapping into a very deep well of energy and of intelligence and of commitment to that which is sacred, to that which has deeper meaning. So that when you get lost with the like, I don't feel like doing this, it's too hard, I'd rather watch Netflix or eat an ice cream cone or whatever the thing is. A lot of people in our community are like, I'd rather hike a mountain or take extended time on the mat. When you don't need time on the mat, you need to learn how to use the project management tool and get disciplined about that, right? You need to do the thing that actually moves you towards more impact or more evolutionary contribution, because that's where the deeper meaning and fulfillment is. And that's when people will show up and thank you for doing what you do. And they won't know that you had to overcome what you've had to overcome in most cases, but you'll know it. All right. So that's my little pep talk. Does anyone feel a little pepped up? A little bit? Or at least when you get lost, and this is really what it is, when you get lost, do you know how to find it again? Do you know how to go back to the vision, feel the feelings, connect to the source of your why? Can I see some nods? Okay, good. Phew. All right, let's talk. Let's talk about that for a minute.
That's really helpful, Cate. That is really helpful what you said. Really just helps keep you on track. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Actually, quite emotional, when you said something like, thank goodness for the people who've devoted their life to passing on their teachings to others. That just brought up a whole flood of like tears to my eyes. I don't know what you triggered there, but yeah, thank God for the people that are prepared to share their teachings with others, their learnings with others.
Yeah. And to really notice that, like, if this is how a life of meaning works, if this is part of the universal law, then we just have to study anyone great and see, is it true there? Is it true there? One of the great ways to understand universal laws is look for exceptions. And if you can't find an exception, you're onto something. Like, what's going to happen when I drop the pen? What's going to happen when I drop the pen top? What's going to happen when I drop the nail file? Right? Seems like it's a universal, pretty universal. If you can find someone who's done something great, who hasn't had to who hasn't made sacrifice, or hasn't had focus, or hasn't learned from experience, report back. Let me know. I want to check it out. I really do. Like, in all honesty, I'm not just being snarky here, but it's like, that's what really makes it fantastic. And okay, there's order. There's order. So, another way of asking this is like, what is the desire of the Father, or the creative expression? What is that asking you, like, deep down? Like, what is that asking you to sacrifice? What is that asking you to make sacred, and therefore to make everything else profane, everything else non-essential, move out of your focus? I just want to share too. I was with a neighbor who really knows my work, who's done work with me too, just in different areas for probably 18 years, something like that. So a while. So she's seen 18 years ago me, whatever that was, 33 years old. Oh no, I guess it's more like 31 years old to now. And she said something to me about like me being like a super achiever. And I was like, because that's not what I perceive. Like, that's not my experience in myself at all, really. I tend to see people that have done a lot more than me and think they're super achievers, right? And just be like, The reason I share that is like when you actually are full on in meaning, it does start to create like people will notice. There's an energy that changes. And that energy, it continues to change. I mean, in yoga, that's where, and I'm not, that's where that word guru, that like density of consciousness, because it's really a density of adherence to law. And if part of law is you have to live a life of meaning, part of the law is you get a choice whether or not to make your life significant, and you can choose to do that. And if you choose to do that, that's the only way to have a life of meaning and fulfillment. Meaning if you choose not to do that, by law, you don't get fulfillment and meaning, right? That the more you choose that, the more you choose to do, to make the sacrifices you need to make to hit your true target, the more of that guru, that density of consciousness starts to be in you. And it's just density of following the law. You get more to be a clear gateway for others to understand reality and order. And so people notice. And that does create a bit of I'd say an attraction where people are like, oh, it'll create an attraction, but it'll also create a push away too for people who don't want to take any more responsibility in their life. So they'll just be like less connected to you, and people that are more interested in you will be more attracted. And what'll happen, and this is what I experience more and more of, is certain relationships get traction at light speed. At light speed, where you're like, in the past, it would have taken me X amount of time to develop this kind of a collaborative relationship. And now it just happens. Now it's instantaneous, or the feeling of that. So I just want to bring that in there too. Like there's definitely signs that you're, on the right track. And because when you live a life of more evolutionary contribution and deeper meaning, where you're hitting your true targets, it will attract other people that are also doing the same. And you'll be able to notice that really easily as well. And they'll be able to notice it in you really easily. And now you have 2 or more people that have a lot more capacity. And so synergy and collaboration then also becomes exponential. So Dan Sullivan, he has this 10X program where basically you take whatever target you have and you 10X it. So then he created the 100X club, which is where you bring 2 10Xers together. And now their capacity is 100X because it's a multiplier. Fascinating, isn't it? Isn't that concept just like, whoa, that's how people do big things. That's how people do really big things. So what did someone like Gandhi, when you think of like, what did Gandhi sacrifice? And did he see it as a sacrifice, or did he see it as making something greater sacred? So from the outside in, I would say some of the moms in the neighborhood would say that they might see my life really differently than I see my life. They might see that I've made sacrifices in terms of, being less available for certain activities that they're more involved in, because of devoting more of my time to what was more sacred to my path. And so it's not something that other people can really judge, like what you need to make sacred. You will have to discount a lot of opinions. So I'm just going to throw that in there too. How a lot of other people spend their time is really different than mine. My relationships are very intimate. In general, I don't have much outside of that. I don't have much tolerance for the ordinary, really, because I have a bar that leads more to the extraordinary. And so if that, I just want to say that means that a lot of non-essential relationships have had to, they go into that diffusion away from the tejas. How your future self uses time is not how you're currently using time. It never is. And so attending to that as well. And you can add one more line on your piece of paper if there's room, or just do a new one of, your future self, how does your true target self, how's that person, what does their calendar feel like, look like? How do they use time? What do they do? What do they not do? What do they do more of? What's their competence? What's your future self competence with time? This comes from a book my friend wrote. I should have, I'll have to look up the reference. Her name's Megan Henderson, and she wrote a book, a children's book on Nataraja's dance. Nataraja is one of the Hindu deities, Lord of the Dance. And many of you have seen the icon, the man with the wild dreadlocks dancing in the Ring of Fire, standing on the mouse. Mythology is so fascinating in how many teachings can be told in a story and then can land, because humans learn through story. I'm just gonna go through this, and as I'm going through it, you can see how this applies to right now for you moving into your true target. Okay, so this is a symbol of the 5 acts of Shiva. So this is Shiva dancing. That's the Nataraj form. So creation, the drum that Shiva holds in his upper right hand gives rhythm to the dance of creation, the heartbeat of the universe. So that's the first order, is rhythm. Two, preservation or maintenance. The right leg is in the exact middle of the figure, which is necessary to maintain or preserve balance. Shiva is standing on the chaos of life. Apasmara, yet remains stable. So standing on chaos, yet stable. Why? Because number 1 was order, right? Because there's rhythm. So he's got rhythm from the inside out. He knows the midline. He knows the center. Now, in the center in yogic subtle body anatomy is a hollow vortex. The sushumna is hollow and carries energy, but itself is not, it's not like a rod, right? It's not like a steel rod. It's like a hollow rod that conducts energy. So super fascinating, isn't it? Like this, the center is subtle, it's there, and he knows it. We all know, we can all find center. And this is why we do poses in yoga that challenge our balance. Can we find our center upside down, inside out, balancing on one arm, right? With our legs in a split, a twisted split. Can we still find the midline? Because the midline is always present. The middle is always there. The intelligence of the central vortex is always there. That's the beingness in the center of the becoming. That's always there. Okay, number 3, destruction or dissolution. Shiva's upper left hand holds fire. It represents the destruction of the universe so that it can be created once again. The destruction is more closely related to something that dissolves in water. It doesn't disappear, it just changes form. So yesterday I said something about Dharma will use everything you've got, right? It'll use everything it's got, but you're gonna have to change form. The true target is not who you are now. It can't be, because it has to go through a fire. Fire is naturally destructive because the tejas itself, the fire itself, the laser itself will burn off all that is non-essential. And you'll become a more potent version of yourself. Okay, number 4, concealment or illusion. Shiva's right foot is pressing down on the demon Apasmara. The demon represents the ignorance and forgetfulness that Shiva defeats. Because the true nature of self is now revealed. There's no more illusion. Apasmara is actually happily defeated and smiling.
Okay, could I just ask you to go back to destruction or dissolution? I just heard a reference to fire and to water, and I'm just a bit confused by the two together and what the relationship was that you were talking about.
Yeah, so the destruction is more closely related to something that dissolves in water. It doesn't disappear, it just changes form. So water is malleable. Like if I pour the water into the glass, this water right now, it's not really, it's in the form of a stream, and now it's in the form of the shape of the glass. So the malleability, fire enables the fluidity of changing form. Kind of like lava in a way. Like there's a fluidity that happens because of fire that you don't get without it. What causes the water to evaporate from the oceans into the clouds? What causes the clouds to release the rains? That transmutation, the thermodynamics requires heat, or transference of hot to cold and cold to hot, of pressure to non-pressure and non-pressure to pressure. All of that is encompassed in the concept of fire that changes the form.
So when water doesn't have fire, it becomes ice and is not malleable. Would that
Right,
be...
until it is, right? Until something melts the ice. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And then the water becomes the steam condenses, becomes the water freezes, becomes the ice. Yep. All that. So I think in here, like the key in here is like you've got to expect to be able to change. You all have met and worked with people that will refuse to change. There's great studies on this, like with people with a death, with basically a death sentence, with a diagnosis of a death sentence, saying like, you can change. All you have to do is these new habits. They refuse to change their diet. Not willing to change form. Or people now, I mean, the United States is so fat. Like, I know this is happening in a lot of countries, but like how we use energy for many of us has fascinated us for a long time. Like anyone who experimented as a little kid and created like a solar cooker, like, oh, we can use this energy of the sun, which is here all the time. And yet we're still like in our country, that we're creating jobs for coal mining. This is like, to me, just absolutely astounding. Like, why would we want to create jobs for coal mining? Like, why is that a good idea? Well, it fits an instant need that we have coal miners that want to work. Is the future going to need more coal miners or less coal miners? Well, it might depend how many of the particulates of coal we can actually take out of the air once we burn it, or how much coal future humans are going to want to breathe. We know it affects. There's great studies that were just released on like how much these microparticulates affect the elderly population, how many of them die because there's too many particulates in the air. So maybe instead of keeping the coal miners, keeping them in that form, we need to upgrade their skill set into efficient energy production that doesn't have a particulate side effect that kills many people and is really costly to society. Change form, new skills, right? And so we see this, we can see it in terms of public policy, we can see it in terms of our relatives and their health conditions. We can see it all over the place. Yeah, so that's water. Okay, concealment or illusion, we just read that. I just want to talk about this. When this to me was something that I feel like it was really better described in the Vedic world than I have found in other mythology. Not saying it doesn't exist. I just find the Vedic interpretations of Maya and ignorance and illusion to be very, very highly developed, that it's part of the playful expression of consciousness. That it's not inherently like wrong or bad, that you forget that you're on your track. Once you know the rules of the game, once you befriend Apasmara, then you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot again. And you smile, and the demon smiles back and is like, I got you again. You know that like little thing where you, little kids love this joke where they point to they're like, you have a stain right here, and you look down and they get your nose. And then they laugh. And if you're a good person, you laugh too, instead of getting mad. It's kind of like, oh, got you again. You forgot what was really meaningful and important in your life. So that's the spirit of it.
I have something to add. I don't know, just to maybe clarify so I get what you're saying, is it's kind of like that creative expression of like Shakti forgets it's where it came from, who Shiva is.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we can forget for a long time, and it can be really painful too, right? Where we're like, oh, wow, I really got off track for a while. And that's part of the, because the true nature is now revealed, there's no more illusion. There's a sense of, it really goes to number 5. It goes to the revelation. You can't have revelation without concealment. Like part of the path that we're on as an evolutionary path, or as a spiritual path, or as a whole person path, is that we've learned things that we didn't know. Even connected to the ground of being, which was probably there at some point, either before we took form in a body or in our early childhood. And then we forgot just the joy of being, the peace of being. But then when we remember, it's like, oh my gosh, there's a joy in the remembering. There's a joy in the reconnection that can't be there without the forgetting. And there's a bit of like the same thing happens on this path of the true target, where things will get really hard and you'll forget your why, and you'll give up, and you'll not reach out to the right people who can actually help you. You'll reach out to the wrong people who are, basically stuck in themselves, and therefore not very helpful for you. And then something will shift, and you'll remember to reach out to the people that can actually help you, or to do the actions which you actually know you need to do, and you'll do them, and you'll rediscover a joy. The law will be reaffirmed in that. And so there's a bit of a hey, you're probably not going to stay on target the whole time, and that's part of it. That's part of the path. That's part of the pulsation. The concealment is just as much of a part of the pulsation as the revelation. Even the conversation earlier today around like playing small, right? Like that's part of the concealment. And then when you gain traction with a group, or you gain traction with fan base and audience, however you want to see it, I like to think of it more as a tribe of collaborators. There's even greater joy, because you remember what it was like to be concealed, and therefore you can relate also to all those who are still in concealment. And that's important. That's an important part of the cycle. Okay. Revelation.
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I ask you a related question? It's Mariko here. So if the pulsation you talk about, if we can relate back to being and becoming, it's like pulsating between being and then becoming, and go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of like, to me, the midline and the whole dance is the being and the becoming. Now, in the dance or in the becoming, we'll forget being.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll forget meaning and purpose. The sacrifice is not a sacrifice when it's sacred, when we remember the sacred, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a sacrifice in terms of, gosh, I have to sacrifice what's really, like when you sacrifice the great for the good, that feels bad because it's not sacred. It's not the right attitude. It's not the right use of your time, space. There's something that really needs to shift. So when people are in that place of martyrdom, and many of you were raised to be martyrs. I'm seeing some nodding going on with like, yes, I was raised to be a martyr. My mother, the nun who taught at my school, the blah, 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 like trained me to be a martyr for something else. But it wasn't clear what I was making sacred. I wasn't the one choosing to make it sacred. I was doing it, it was more under a command and control structure, not a personal, not a self-empowered structure.
So said
So-
another way. Sorry, one last thing. Said another way. Is it? Would you say it's like a vairagya and abhyasa? Like a, you do the work of becoming, yet you can always go back to being and detached to the
That's
result.
the midline is always there. Yeah, exactly. And the midline is not the bliss that runs through the midline, the bliss body that runs through the midline is not dependent on the dance.
Right.
Not right, or any part of that cycle. It understands that all the parts of the cycle are there. So yes. And when you're in a time, I mean, sometimes people are in time of concealment, and it's, COVID did that for a lot of people. Where like the pivot to what the next reality became very much shut people down, a certain group of people. So a lot of people got really shut down and not knowing how to navigate. How do I work from home? How do I take care of my kids at home? I'm worried about my parents dying. I blah, 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 blah. I don't have a job anymore. And that level of shutting down, people can forget or there's an underdeveloped experience of the midline. Right, of the bliss body, of the ground of being. When that's true, like some people are in concealment all the time, right? And so many of you as teachers are helping people feel, you're helping people actually find that. And as they find that, there's revelation. So revelation, Shiva's lower left hand in elephant trunk pose is pointing to an uplifted left foot to remind us of Ganesha. Ganesha is the elephant-headed god and the remover of obstacles who helps us find our way. I want to say too, Ganesha is not just the remover of obstacles. Ganesha is also the placer of obstacles, right? Tricky elephant boy. Why is it? Is we get into it, it's like, because the obstacle is the way. The critical issue is the only path. And when we get into right relationship with that, we stop resisting that this is the critical issue. We get out of victimhood with our critical issue. Why do I have to deal with this issue? Instead, it's like, Ganesha, thank you. You put this issue right on my lap because this is the way. The obstacle is the way. Ganesha helps us find our way. Shiva's pointed left foot signifies upliftment, liberation, and freedom. You can all just do this like standing. Notice when you stand on one foot, how the uplifted foot can go in any direction. And that's that freedom. Like only one foot needs to be on the ground to completely free the opportunity of the other foot. The hand pointing to the foot means I get to direct my attention to freedom. If I can direct my attention to freedom, anything's possible. So the equal and opposite effect of like the more intense the concealment, the more intense the sacrifice, the greater the revelation.
Hello.
Shiva's lower right hand is in a gesture of blessing. This blessing says, Abhaya Mudra, or have no fear. Have no fear. Open palm. So the mythology can help as well. So we now have beliefs and thoughts and behaviors. We're clear on the future self. We get that it's a bit of a tricky game to play. Right? The Shiva Nataraj, it's a pretty complex symbol of this game of manifestation. Of all the acts, of all the ways, of all the things, of all the challenges that arise. Okay, so the next part of this is really looking at how do we get very clear on the critical issues, because what we need to do is really come up with strategy next. So from your critical issues, we need to create some strategy. Where we left off with our examples that Mariko and Sarah gave us was that we get that we can start to marry one thing to another thing to create a strategy. I'm just gonna grab Sarah's here and show you how we'll turn this into a strategy. I'm gonna just shrink it so I have some more room on the screen. Okay, so I just want, Sarah, we'll stick with yours. You can unmute. And after all, because now that might seem like a mini forever ago. What's the biggest critical issue as you see it right now with all the things?
Lack of clarity over location.
Okay.
Not knowing where I'm going.
Okay. I think it's lack of clarity on the business model.
Ah, okay.
Or the income streams.
Mm-hmm.
Which could be tied to location, but probably is location independent, given that there's so much in the unknown with how many events you'll be doing, at least in 2021.
Yeah.
By 2022, the marketplace may have changed so dramatically with events, or not, or it may have pivoted back, but there's too much question mark for me in there to be like, knowing that I can build a solid plan for 2022. That doesn't involve a lot of money coming in from online. Do you agree?
I'm not sure I understood. So say that again. So my plan has to be independent of my online earnings?
No, it has to be dependent on online earnings.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this doesn't really make sense. This might make sense by 2023, you know, to spend all this time doing, you know, live, we'll just say in person in Egypt, etc. But for 2021, 2022, like until maybe just through 2021, there's just, because you and I both know, like with events and stuff, like having more advanced planning helps with marketing. So, right, like if you know you're filling 10 events in 2021 that are on location, that'll definitely happen. It's different than 4, and it's different than 20. So if these things, if there needs to be a strong online income, because that's all we can actually bank on.
Yeah.
That's going to have to be a critical part of the plan, because this COVID thing is so strong with an event-based business. It's such a huge threat, right? Hotels are going under.
Yeah.
Big companies are laying off massive amounts of people because they did not see this coming and they can't pivot. So that's the wonderful thing about being micro business. It's like, oh, we got to pivot. Okay. So how much money do you need to make online in 2021?
How much do I need? Oh, hello. Sorry, dog.
It's all right.
It would be nice to make 100 to 150,000 sterling.
Okay. So.
No, I don't need to.
Okay. So what was it? 100 to 125? Is that what she said? Or 150?
100 to 150. Yeah, I say 125. Yeah.
Okay. 125 to 150. Sorry. I was distracted. 125 to 150. So this has got to be X amount online, X online, and then X as we'll just say free diving. And then getting real with the free diving of like X, like how much income can this actually be in 2021? How much income can this actually be in 2021? So if we go to strategy here, one of the weaknesses is just knowing these numbers. and how that income will then come in. But we're going to marry these unknowns to a known, which is that you already have a network, a reputation, and good marketing skills and adaptability. And then we'll have a strategy. So the strategy starts with a sentence stem with like, how might I? That's the sentence stem. We're going to put a verb in there. I'll use the verb maximize. And then I'm going to put a strength in. How do I maximize my reputation, network, and marketing skills to overcome a weakness and a threat? So the weakness is that you haven't made $100,000 or 100,000 sterling in online before, correct?
Yep.
And you'll need to do that. Okay. So to earn, and the reason I'm going with 100 is I'm thinking she can get the 25 to 50K in events, in in-person events, regardless of what's happening with COVID. There's going to be a small group of people with strong immune systems or antibodies to COVID that are like, I'm going free diving with Sarah. Right. I think we can bank on 50K on that. I just do. And I'm making the strategy here, so I'm going to go with that. Earn 100K, but that still means that we need to make the 100K online. Reputation, network, market, and we'll put YHC in here because all you have to really do is really apply the heck out of YHC, which you're already in. Okay, I'm going to add a threat just because we'd have like, given COVID's fucked up the free diving event-based industry, given COVID. So once I have this, I actually have a strategy. Because this, how might I, if I just take this out, this how might, I end up with a strategy. All I need to do is maximize these strengths to overcome this weakness given this threat. So now we know Sarah's got the beginning of a strategy where she knows she's going to have to leverage or maximize YHC, her reputation, her network, and her market to earn 100K online. Now the location really falls out, right, of that part of it. The location issue is going to be another strategy. So this is number one. Number two, we have a strength in online research. If most of your money's coming in online, it really opens up where you can live. Whether or not, I think the question is like, if there's a lot of prediction right now from what I've read that like, kind of get used to COVIDs. Has anyone been reading that kind of stuff? Yeah. Okay. So what that might mean is that like the next virus, and we can create viruses and pathogens in laboratories as well as those that nature is creating. And there has been biological warfare for a very long time. So like, given that pandemics can happen, how do you make your business pandemic proof? In case after we have the vaccine for COVID, there's the next thing that then disrupts the world again. And we are getting kind of used to a world that can be disrupted, that might be potentially the new normal. I'm not trying to like scare anyone here or whatever. I'm just saying like, I think a lot of businesses, bigger businesses are thinking this way. So as small businesses, we might as well be thinking this way too. Given that, you might be able to live anywhere you want and just do X amount on location free diving in 2022, 2023, 2025, 2030.
Yeah.
And then, whether or not you'd want to do that, there's probably also going to be a developed part of the population that does things with as much freedom as possible, regardless of what everybody else is doing. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, the evolutionary biologist, did a lecture. I'm like, I'm going to try to find it, but it was like 10 years. It was like 10 years old, this one that he did, where he talked about, so if here's like the population and the global population and the status quo, I'm totally digressing. But I'm doing it because it's fascinating. Basically what he would say is like, there's always an emergent group. So in any kind of global population, if this is now the global population, I'm just drawing it in a different way. There's always the population on the edge of the emergent. Yeah, is that true if you kind of think about it?
Mm-hmm.
The first group of pioneers, the first group of, the first astronauts that got to the moon. Like there's always something in emergent in a field. Uli's a mathematician, right? There's always an emergent to math. There's always a small group of people that are thinking in a way that's moving into the unknown. So what's on either side of here? This is the unknown. So what Lipton was saying was that what happens, and what's going to happen, is this emergent group is going to basically have greater freedoms in its own structure and beliefs and behaviors. So COVID and things like COVID, any pressures are actually they force more emergence. So my point in all this is there will probably be an emergent group that will be free diving in 2025 and 2030, whether or not there's a pandemic happening. They'll figure out ways around it. They'll figure out ways to experience more freedom and more liberation, because that's the nature of what the emergent is pressing into. So I just wanted to say, that was like a long way to say that the emergent this part grows until it becomes the mainstream, the status quo. And then the emergent happens again. So many of us are part of this emergent culture. If I look to online, I went online in 2007. I knew then I wanted it to become the majority of my income by 2012. And so I made that happen. And I was, some people say like, oh, wow, you're really ahead of your time. Because I started yogahealer in 2001. That's when I got the domain, developed the website, started growing my email list in 2001. Someone just signed up for a Living Ayurveda course who's been on my list since 2001. That caused a chuckle in the team, right? Like, oh, it only took 19 years for that person to convert. Right. But I was part of an emergent group of like shifting online and therefore using technologies and whatnot that then becomes something that becomes leverageable. My point to all this is you probably could have as much in-person events in 2023 if you wanted to, but you might also decide that you don't want to. And therefore,
thinking. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks for going on that journey with me, everybody. I think that stuff's super fascinating. I'm just going to put that over here so we don't lose it. And it might remind me to find that Lipton interview from 2010. All right.
I think it may be in the Yogi Detox.
Oh, is it? Did I put it in there?
It may
I think it's with a British guy.
Yeah.
And they're in like a white room.
I don't know. I just had the audio.
Okay. Okay, so we've got strategy number 1. Now, strategy number 2. And the reason I want to walk you all through this is to understand the concept of it. Obviously, we can't do all this together, but I find the more of these I've watched my coach do with other people, I'm like, oh, this is an equation. It's algebra. There's X's. X's are like the weaknesses, or Y's are the strengths. Or actually, who knows what I'm doing? Uli, probably, now that we have a mathematician in the world, you can give me the real words for what it is that I'm trying to describe. But it's basically a formula, right? And all we're trying to make sure is that we're putting the right factors in to make the formula really come alive. And when it comes alive, there's a sense of like, that is a very good strategy. That is a very good strategy. So earning 100K online, given COVID, maximizing all these assets and relationships and skills that I have, that seems solid. Where to live, that's the next part. Like given that, how might I, and I didn't give you guys the given that, how might I do this? Given that, why? So the given that in here, I just want to go back and fill this in. Given that I need to earn 100K online. That was the given that part of the formula over here. Right now, I'm going to do a given that that's an opportunity, which is I can live anywhere by the nature of online business. Another opportunity is given that I can do online research from Egypt on where to live. I'm going to tell another little story. Lucky dog, as she's known, met Loxy dog. Loxy dog lives in Manhattan. Loxy dog's like 100-pound. I don't even know what she is. She's a mutt. It's big 3-year-old mutt who lives in Manhattan. Now, Loxy's parents did online research, and they happened to find like this little neighborhood where we live in. And they came here for a few months, sight unseen, rented the place, drove 3,000 miles across the country. And I'm like, that was, that's really interesting because it's a really cool, like where we live is really amazing. It's like a very, like she could have gotten it wrong and she really got it right. And she felt really fortunate. Now I found this valley 25 years ago, also through online research in 1996, when there was very little on the internet. I found it through government statistics because the local ski hill got more snow than anywhere else. That's how I chose here. It was still through online research 25 years ago style. You guys can imagine, like think back to what you were doing in 1996 and how are you using the internet. There was stuff on the internet then. Okay, so that's obviously much evolved. It's a much bigger opportunity. How might I choose the best place to live? And I would give it a date. When do you want to move by? When do you want to be in your new place by, or your new town?
I've been saying today before the end of the year, which is super soon.
Okay.
I'm also conscious we have Brexit, and post-December, I'm not welcoming Europe. Everything just gets more complicated. But okay. I don't know how much of a factor that's really going to be.
Okay. So, but December 31st is what it feels like that, as far as you can tell, like that's the urge. That's the desire.
That feels like there's pressure, but yeah, I just.
Pressure's okay. Like the universe often will speak in pressure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do I choose the best place to live and move by December 31st, 2020, given that I can live anywhere and I need to do online research? Now this becomes a strategy, and then all we have to do is choose the best place to live, given that you can live anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you might need the flexibility of no pets, because where you land in December 31st might not be where you be forever. So that we could also bring a weakness in here. And I know this can be really emotionally charged, so I'm going to ignore the emotional charge for now, and say, and this is also in the weakness categories. But we can also marry it to a strength over here where you know how to get things done. You're a get things doneer, given that I need to find 7 pets, new homes. Just so we make sure that that's loud and clear. Faye is going to cheer you on that one. She lives on a boat. Okay. So, or we can pull that pet one into number 3 strategy because it's such a big thing. How do I find 7 pets new home, given that I have a stellar reputation and a solid network? So there I'm just, and I know how to do marketing. Like any of those skills will actually help you market your pets to new homes and find the right homes.
But most of them are coming with me.
They are coming with you. Okay.
Yeah.
If they're all coming with you, then
Yeah, it's the logistics of the move is a bit of a
okay. So, okay, great clarification. Given that I can live anywhere with 7 pets. And that'll just put some more parameters. Everyone is cheering you on this one. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions on strategy? Like we just have to kind of do this in order for you guys to figure it out, and then we can come back with questions. Any questions before that we start? Because I'm going to give you 12 minutes to create 3 strategies, like just the best you can, knowing that you have the infinite future to get better at this.